The acid rain fell like molten glass across the wasteland of Kepler 442b, hissing as it met the cracked earth. The storm had come without warning, as they always did on this forsaken moon, violent, merciless, and eager to devour anything foolish enough to stand in its path. Mira pressed her back against the rocky outcrop, her breathing labored. The rebreather mask clung to her face, fogged with condensation. Her exosuit was compromised. She could see the warning lights blinking red along her left arm where the acid had eaten through the protective layer. Pain radiated up to her shoulder, sharp and insistent. She had been planetside for 3 months, studying the indigenous species the colonists called cubs, bipedal creatures no taller than a human child, covered in silvery fur that shimmered like starlight. They possessed an intelligence that defied their primitive appearance, communicating through a series of clicks and whistles that Mira had only begun to understand. The research station was 6 kilometers away. She'd never make it. Through the sheets of caustic rain, Mira saw movement. Her heart seized. A cub emerged from the storm, its large amber eyes fixed on her. It was Vex. She recognized the distinctive scar across his snout from their first encounter weeks ago. He had been curious then, approaching her equipment with careful, deliberate movements. "Go back," Mira shouted, though her voice was lost in the howling wind. "It's not safe." But Vex didn't retreat. Instead, he turned his head skyward and released a piercing whistle that cut through the storm like a blade. Mira watched in amazement as more cubs emerged from the toxic deluge, their fur slicked against their small bodies. 10, then 20, then 50 of them materialized from the wasteland. Vex clicked rapidly, his small hands gesturing toward Mira. The cubs responded immediately, forming a tight circle around the outcrop. They stood shoulder to shoulder, their backs to the storm, facing outward like ancient shields. "What are you doing?" Mira whispered, her voice cracking. The cubs began to hum, a low, resonant frequency that vibrated through the air. Mira felt it in her bones, in her teeth. The sound grew louder, more intense, until she realized something impossible was happening. The acid rain was stopping, not stopping entirely, but deflecting. The cubs' bodies had begun to glow with a faint bioluminescence, and where the rain touched their fur, it slid away as if meeting an invisible barrier. They were creating a shield, not technological, but biological. Their bodies were generating some kind of field that repelled the corrosive downpour. But at what cost? Mira could see the strain on their small faces. Their legs trembled. The outer cubs bore the worst of it. Wisps of smoke rose from their fur where droplets managed to penetrate their defense. They were sacrificing themselves to protect her. "No," Mira crawled forward, reaching toward Vex. "Stop. You're hurting yourselves." Vex turned his head slightly, meeting her eyes. In that gaze, Mira saw something profound, not just intelligence, but compassion, understanding. He clicked softly. A sound she had learned meant friend. Tears blurred her vision. These creatures, whom humanity had barely acknowledged as sentient, were forming a living wall between her and certain death. The galactic community had dismissed them as primitive curiosities, not worthy of first contact protocols. But here they stood, demonstrating a level of empathy that put civilized species to shame. The storm raged for what felt like hours, but was likely only minutes. The cubs never faltered. When one in the outer ring grew too weak, another from the inner circle would step forward, taking their place without hesitation. They rotated positions with military precision, ensuring no single cub bore too much of the burden. Mira removed her emergency beacon from her belt and activated it. The signal would reach the station. Help would come, but would it come in time? Through the protective wall of cubs, she saw the sky beginning to lighten. The storm was passing. The acid rain lessened to a drizzle, then to scattered drops, then nothing. The clouds parted, revealing the pale blue sun of Kepler 442b. The cubs' humming ceased. Their bioluminescence faded. As one, they collapsed. "No, no, no!" Mira lurched forward, catching Vex as he fell. His small body was hot to the touch, his fur patchy where the acid had burned through. But he was breathing. They all were, exhausted, injured, but alive. She cradled Vex in her arms, her tears falling onto his scarred snout. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this?" Vex's eyes fluttered open. He raised one small hand and placed it against Mira's chest, right over her heart. Then he touched his own chest and clicked softly, the sound that meant friend, the sound that meant family. The rescue shuttle arrived 20 minutes later. The medical team found Mira surrounded by 53 cubs, all receiving emergency treatment from her limited first aid supplies. She refused to board until every single cub was loaded first. Later, when the Council of Worlds reviewed her report, there was silence in the chamber. Mira stood before them, her arms still bandaged, and delivered her testimony. They knew the storm would kill them, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through. They knew, and they came anyway. Not because they feared us or worshipped us. Not because we had anything to offer them. They came because they understood something that we, with all our technology and civilization, often forget. She paused, looking at each council member in turn. They came because when someone is in danger, you help them, no matter the cost. That's not primitive. That's not simple instinct. That's the highest form of intelligence there is. 3 weeks later, the cubs of Kepler 442b were granted full sentient status and protection under galactic law. The research station became an embassy, and Vex, the scarred cub who had led his people into a storm to save a human, became the first of his kind to be called a hero by species across the stars. But to Mira, he was something more. He was the moment humanity learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is step into the storm, and sometimes the greatest honor is being worth saving.